Terra is a decentralized financial payment network that rebuilds the traditional payment stack on the blockchain. It utilizes a basket of fiat-pegged stablecoins, algorithmically stabilized by its reserve currency Luna, to facilitate programmable payments and open financial infrastructure development. So there's Anchor protocol for savings, there's Mirror protocol for investments, and there's Chai for payments. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it off to our speakers to introduce yourself and then get started on today's session. In the interim, do you guys want to introduce yourself? Introduce yourself to the audience, maybe a little bit about your background and what you do with Terra.
Yeah, sure. I am not Izan, although I think Zoom believes I am. I wish I was Izan, but my name is Will. I think I go by like a pseudonym on Twitter and stuff because I'm like kind of a privacy nerd. But yeah, so I joined Terra actually a month ago today, June 1st, start date, right after kind of like the Anchor and stablecoin kind of like issues we had, which we debriefed. I feel like really well, but we can talk about that later. So I kind of missed the heat of the moment there, but yeah, joined as an ecosystem lead. So primarily I'm going to be working with all of you, kind of working on this third-party developer ecosystem. So we launched a layer one kind of chain to support smart contracts. And by doing this, we've enabled kind of a whole use case of third-party development. As you guys know, we build Anchor, we build Mirror, and we build all these protocols, but we want to encourage kind of this burgeoning ecosystem of independent developers, entrepreneurs that want to build with these new building blocks. And so I'll be kind of the primary point of contact for all of you guys that are interested in doing that. So sure, we'll all meet. I'm learning a bunch myself. For the past like 3 or 4 years, I've been deep in the e-commerce world. Was at a online grocery store in Philadelphia. We scaled from really no subscribers to 400,000 in 2 years. It was like a kind of a e-commerce play in the grocery space. And I got interested in DeFi primarily because I found e-commerce a little bit boring, to be honest, and was kind of like trading cryptocurrency a lot of time. So yeah, I mean, if you guys have any kind of questions about that world, always feel free to reach out. But yeah, we'll mostly be talking about DeFi and Terra today. I'll try in a sec. So we have Carlos and Izan. Carlos from core engineering from Korea, and then Izan in New York City, who's interning on kind of the smart contract side. So I'll let them introduce themselves while I figure out this screen sharing situation.
Oh, sure. So I'll start. So I'm Carlos Santiago. I'm a core engineer at Terraform Labs. And yeah, basically I'm mainly working on smart contracts for Mirror as well as Anchor and other cool projects in Terra ecosystem. So yeah, for anything related to smart contracts, you can hit me up and I'll try to help.
Hey, and I'm Izan. As you've seen, who knew my name was this popular? Pretty cool. But I'm a smart contract intern this summer. I just graduated from Penn and recently got into the DeFi scene, and Terra seemed like an obvious fit because what we're doing is so amazing, which you'll see throughout the presentation today. Since I'm just an intern, when you do have questions, please reach out to Carlos. Just kidding, you can hit me up as well. All right, well, take it away.
Cool, so basically we'll just go through like a quick intro to Terra, then kind of go into a technical overview, which Izan and Carlos are gonna lead. And then we'll leave some time for questions and kind of like brainstorming with ideas, and then everyone can kind of like reasonably unmute and kind of share what they're thinking about working on. So so I guess intro slide could be important to go over. Terra is a layer one chain, but in an interesting way, we build a lot of products kind of internally. So Terra, for those who don't know, Korea-based team in the e-commerce world. Every like transaction in this low gross margin business of like, you make a 4% profit margin, 2% of that's going to go to your payment processor. So in Korea, these guys, Do Kwon and Daniel Shin, had this idea, why not create like a blockchain-based settlement layer? We can charge a 1% transaction fee, literally almost like double your bottom line in Korea. And so they launched this business in Korea, payments settled on a blockchain. And it became kind of like this really interesting business. First of all, for e-commerce, but then enabling like this whole new world. And they kind of realized, wait, these rails are so cool. Why don't we go beyond just like payments and go into like savings and investing? And so TFL has kind of evolved into this ecosystem where there's a lot of internal projects being built, and all of them are layered onto this Terra blockchain, which we'll kind of get more into. And the kind of piece that's securing all of this is this algorithmic stablecoin, really one of the oldest in existence that has kind of proven its resilience over the years. But yeah, there's so many different pieces here. It's a stablecoin, it's a smart contract platform, it's savings, investing, and payments, but all of them have their own name. So when people ask what Terra is, it's a lot of different things, but we'll kind of get into what all of that encompasses. So Terra, proof of stake based blockchain network. It is a implementation of this thing called like Cosmos SDK, which uses a very innovative form of consensus, probably some of the most innovative consensus mechanisms since Satoshi kind of introduced a lot of the pioneering work with proof of work. Terra was launched in 2018, and since that time has grown to a TVL of 5 billion as the adoption of kind of this algorithmic stablecoin has led to all these new innovations like payments, savings, etc. 300 million kind of total Luna stake. So Luna being kind of the securing token of the stable mechanism that powers US Terra, which is the USD-based stablecoin. Kind of all these other stablecoins that we're trying to also increase adoption of throughout the world. It's all secured by this kind of sister token Luna, which allows you to basically allow arbitrageurs to enter into the system and secure kind of that stable peg of UST or US or another country's kind of dollar pegged currency. Total, yeah. Investors, I mean, I think one of the really great things about Terra is just it's a shelling point for a lot of decentralized finance. So we are kind of like the DeFi chain in the Cosmos ecosystem, and other investors kind of like come across and see that. So whether it be Binance or Coinbase or Kakao, a big kind of like player in Korea, or Bobby in China, or Mike Arrington, really, we have a lot of different players involved. And we'll probably get more of these DeFi players involved as more projects launch in the ecosystem. We'll get these players involved and kind of see that ecosystem evolve even further. So payments and economics. So stablecoins are interesting, right? Like Do Kwon, the CEO and co-founder of Terra, has this interesting tweet like stablecoins are the most important product in crypto. I think he's right in a lot of ways. Because you add stablecoins, it's not just like a dollar pegged currency. You can just build different businesses. So literally, I think, Chai, this payments layer in Korea, is actually a better business in first principles than Stripe, because like you can have a 1% settlement layer versus like a 2.9%. Like that's fundamentally new innovation that you have because all the rails are like crypto based. So as you kind of see these stable coins gain adoption, like Circle and USD coin and Terra, I think you can just like understand this from the point of view of you can build entirely new businesses because the fundamental building block is a digital dollar, packets just being transferred that enable a whole host of new use cases. I think the other interesting thing to note here is Terra is the only fully kind of decentralized, under collateralized stablecoin. I think there's a lot of debate over kind of the resiliency of that long term, but I think the way to understand it is USD coin is backed dollar by dollar by kind of currency reserves. Terra invented, Do Kwon and the team basically implemented a way to do this in an algorithmic fashion that has survived the past 4 years or so, kind of proven that resilience. And it will be really interesting to see how this industry evolves. I think if we could all just mute, just so we can get through everything, that would be great. Yeah, so stablecoins, Terra USD. We have, I believe, like a 2 billion in Terra USD issued. When you look at something like Tether, which is the main centralized stable currency, or USD coin, we have a lot of growth. But quickly we're actually catching up to the DAI, DAI being the de facto DeFi stable within the ecosystem, quickly catching up there. I believe our growth rate is faster, so it'll be really interesting to see how that evolves as well. Core point being all of this stuff is super early and we don't know what's going to happen, and I think we'll eventually overtake DAI in my opinion. I think TFLs as well. So stability mechanism. So basically we have the Luna native staking token. It's a governance asset of the Terra blockchain that absorbs any sort of volatility via arbitrageurs, bots in the network, keeping that pegged. That's happening across the network for other stable currencies as well. And the role of Luna being the more demand there is for UST, the more Luna that arbitrageurs can burn, get rewarded for doing so. And then that actually affects the overall Luna supply as well. And this really incentivizes everyone to participate in the system. It's not just like users of Anchor or Mirror, there's arbitrageurs in play, there are network validators. And so everyone's kind of incentivized to keep this peg moving forward and to kind of like secure this overall system. So in terms of other products, we used the stable building blocks to build a few different products within the Terra ecosystem itself. Mirror being kind of a synthetic asset issuing protocol where we kind of launched it in December prior to my time at Terra. But this is basically a way to trade synthetic versions of assets, any real world asset in the future. Right now, kind of like stocks like Apple and Amazon. The ability to like borrow against that collateral, that like stock collateral, and do some interesting things with that. So I think a really cool part of this is like this was launched around the time that like Robinhood banned trading of GameStop. I think during that day, the former CTO of Coinbase retweeted like Mirror on its, I believe it's like launch day, and was like, hey guys, if you want to keep trading like GameStop, you can actually do it on Mirror. I thought it was really funny. It was one of the early times I actually like learned about kind of the innovations in TFL, but that's what this stuff allows you to do. Fully kind of decentralized system. I believe like 20+% of users are actually in Thailand, where trading US-based stocks is actually very difficult to do. And so it's really cool to see kind of like what's going to happen with this stuff. We just announced a new product called Nebula, which is actually like tokenized like portfolios of these different stocks. So similar to like ETFs, where you can trade like tokenized versions of like different portfolios. I think that'll be interesting to see as well. So we don't really have to go through this. I think it's you can probably read all about it on the Mirror site. So I'm just going to skip over that part. But yeah, I think this is a core piece, right? Like Mirror is very composable. If you wanted to build like an entire like ETF kind of trading platform with Mirror as a building block, you totally could do that. And there's some other interesting things you can do as well. For example, like these teams in Thailand, they have reached out to us about building an entire like wealth management business with like people involved, like wealth managers in Thailand and Singapore, using like Mirror because first of all, it's accessible, but like this wealth management industry that barely exists in Thailand. So real entrepreneurs trying to use these things to build pretty interesting businesses. And as the different assets that are mirrored increases, I'm sure we'll see more of this. There's a Mirror mobile app available, not in the US, but also becoming pretty popular as well in these kind of geographies where it's difficult to access these types of securities. Same thing with Anchor, very core building block. This is basically making most savings accounts kind of look not that great. We offer a fixed rate, high yield, 20% APY as a service. I don't know what the trademark issues here are, but we kind of call it like Stripe for savings. Like in 7 lines of code, integrate like a high yield savings account into your financial application. I think that's like a huge win for a lot of neobanks, which we're kind of like already speaking to about integrating a service like Anchor. So I think in the future you'll kind of see these yields generated by proof of stake assets really being the building block, and computationally based instead of kind of the typical business model of like a lender or a bank. So how does Anchor work? Also going to skip over this part because we could probably talk about it for a few hours. But the GM, so general manager Matt, who is joining us from Okta and Microsoft Ventures, is doing an AMA in the Anchor Discord in a few weeks, or I think a few days. So you guys should check that out. So I think Terra is like the DeFi chain within the like Cosmos ecosystem. So the way I think about it is like we have all the different fundamental building blocks and coming out with more to build really anything you would want in a decentralized finance stack. And they're all interoperable. So Terra is able to bridge over to different networks like Ethereum, Binance Smart Chain, soon Solana. And so all of these like different assets that you can issue and mint on the Terra blockchain are not only interoperable with these other chains, which you guys may or may not be more familiar with, but then the entire Cosmos ecosystem as a whole, which is really burgeoning and really growing. And so it's a very interesting kind of like dynamic at play. And we're only at the start of it, which is a really interesting thing to think about. Cosmos and IBC is that layer. Cosmos being kind of this network or internet of blockchains, as they like to say. Terra being one hub within that ecosystem where a lot of, I believe, the decentralized finance applications within Cosmos are happening. For another kind of example of what is a Cosmos hub, they're kind of like application specific chains where the creators have a lot of sovereign control over how things work within it. The creator of Cosmosm, for example, which is a toolkit you'll all be using, is creating a application specific chain just around blockchain-based social networks. And I'm sure you guys will meet him at some point when you kind of get deeper into this ecosystem. But I think the takeaways here are, Terra being this kind of DeFi chain, and Cosmos and IBC being this layer where all these different teams can kind of build and roll their own blockchains. IBC being the protocol to allow them to communicate with one another. And then, yeah, I mean, we're launching a lot of new products. You guys should definitely get involved. We have Chai, which is that payment processor business that the team originally started off with, spun out in Korea, and is basically like similar to an Alipay or a Cash App in Korea. Basically its own business at this point. We used to share a Slack, now we don't. Kind of its own thing, similar with Anchor. Matt is going to turn Anchor into hopefully a really big, interesting business. And then Mirror, trying to keep this alive and flourishing with these new building blocks like Nebula, which is kind of that ETF mechanism and product layer on top of Mirror. So a lot of different things going on, really, really hard to keep up. But I think once you do, you'll kind of realize the power of all these different building blocks that can talk to one another, and you can really build anything you want with. And then what's really next year, just launched Mirror V2. Anchor is integrating with a lot of different players. This Stripe for savings narrative means every neobank that doesn't know about Anchor is kind of probably not doing their jobs. But there's a lot of runway for a product like this. And then on the Terra core side, which I'm sure Carlos can talk more about, there's a new version of our mainnet coming online that supports inter-blockchain communication. There's bridges to different chains like Solana and a lot of other stuff kind of happening there. Kind of interesting to note is Engineering Bay and Terra Academy. These are kind of ecosystem initiatives we're going to use to provide incentives to the whole developer community. So if you guys want to learn like how to write Cosmosm with our developer relations team, or have Doe as like a co-founder of your new protocol, I think these are where we're going to launch these initiatives. And then ecosystem, a lot of interesting new businesses and protocols being launched. We have Mars, incubated by a very close partner team of ours called Delphi Digital. They help out with a lot of these kind of like co-incubations. Alice being a neobank just entirely based off of Anchor. The interesting thing being Alice, we actually invested in them directly. It's a US-based kind of like neobank, but there are entrepreneurs in every single country trying to bring this out as well. So yeah, I think there's a lot of different things going on. I will kind of like hand it off to the engineering team to kind of talk through those, but kind of quickly, like, I think one thing to note about Terra is we're very opinionated on like what we build. Kind of shows by the fact that we incubate a lot of these products about what should be in the ecosystem. But we have relationships with all the major liquidity providers and investors. So I think when you're thinking about what to build, maybe just think about these themes. We'll send this out so you'll kind of know, but I think these are the 4 kind of main themes investors and liquidity providers are really thinking about these days. And I would say, you know, when you're trying to pick what to build, understand these core themes, understand where you are from like a skill perspective. You know, don't try and build an oracle if you're just starting learning about blockchains and crypto. But there's a lot to do here. I would kind of pick one of these verticals based on your experience as a developer, and then kind of think about what you want to learn. And we're here to help. Ecosystem resources. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff here. Look through it. And then, yeah, I mean, we have like $500 million, I think, right now in our community pool. That will be changing soon as there's various proposals on how to bootstrap some other projects incubated within our ecosystem, which you can kind of learn more about in the forums and stuff. But yeah, I mean, these are funds to help projects like get launched and to benefit the ecosystem in general, of which I hope all of you are kind of like co-owners of and stakers of Luna and users of the other projects in the ecosystem. But if you want to build something, feel free to write proposals and kind of like engage in what this community is, because it really is a community-owned thing at the end of the day. So I will hand it off to Carlos and Izan to go through some technical details, and yeah, they'll just kind of like tell me when to change the slide.
All right, hello, folks. What's up? Hope you're all doing well. Thanks, Will, for going over that. That was great. I hope you're all very excited for a wonderful yet brief technical overview of Terra's eng areas. Will, hit the next slide, please. So, as you heard Will say earlier, we have over 50 plus new protocols being built on Terra right now during this summer. And something important is, why would they choose to build on Terra? And one of the big things that I see as a big selling point is that we have an extreme number of normies and a large growing base of normal like users outside of DeFi right now. So our payments application Chai in South Korea has more users than all of DeFi combined, which is pretty crazy. I think something like 10% of all transactions in Korea go through Chai, which is really cool to see. Something else is our Terra economy is growing extremely rapidly with Mirror and Anchor. Terra has only 2 main protocols right now, and each of them has over a few $1 billion locked inside of it, which is super cool to see. We have a entirely proof of stake chain, which is awesome. And we have very quick block time, which is great. And something that's very important is our gas fees on our chain are very low, which means that regular small users don't get priced out performing transactions like they would on Ethereum, where gas fees can be like $20 to $40. With us, it's about like 1 to 2 to 10 cents, which is pretty cool. We also have a lot of cool core primitives that you can use, which means that you have access to all of our fully decentralized algorithmic stablecoins. And we also have very good SDKs to integrate with Anchor and Mirror. And that means that with just a few lines of JavaScript, you can integrate Anchor's 20% yield right into any application without having to touch any smart contracts or blockchain like technicality, just some quick JavaScript. All right, next slide. So as Will talked about earlier, we have full inter-blockchain communication, which means that if there's any other really cool Cosmos chain that you see, you can integrate with them by building an application on Terra, which means you have access to secret network for privacy, Thorchain, and a bunch of other cool stuff. We also have a very good developer tooling kit with Terra.js and our JavaScript SDKs, which you can find out more online about. And finally, for all our smart contracts, we use CosmWasm, which is entirely built in Rust, which might seem a little scary at first, but don't worry, I just learned Rust like a month ago. It's not too bad. Next slide, Will. So today we are going to do a little bit of a smart contract demo, since I was told that not a lot of people are too technical here. So first we're just going to go over some basics of smart contracts, and then Carlos is going to bring us through an example in a little bit. But there's really three main entry points for a smart contract. And by the way, a smart contract is basically a piece of code that exists on the blockchain and can be interacted with. And it's really used to store state, manage transactions, and fire off new messages to other smart contracts. But smart contracts aren't like the best thing in the world. They have limitations, which you should be aware of, which means like things cannot be executed automatically depending on changes on the blockchain. So if a price changes, we can't execute a smart contract automatically because of that. All smart contracts have to be executed by a user. So yeah, there's three main entry points to a smart contract. The first is the instantiate, which basically just provides initial state to store. And then there's execute, which is basically a way to pattern match against different types of messages on your smart contract and run different types of functions to edit the current state that you're holding, compute new things, or fire off new messages, or send funds to a different contract. And finally, we have the query entry point, which allows you to basically get access to the current state of the blockchain. We store basically some primitive states, such as you have access to key value stores on the blockchain, maps, and buckets. It's not too extensible, but it provides basically everything you need. Next slide. So this is kind of the flow of a message once it's sent. It starts off with a user firing off a message execute contract, which is a handle message. It goes into the WASM modules, which kind of just, it looks at what's happening with the message, checks the internal states, and then fires off additional messages. Probably a little too technical for what we need here anyways. All right, next slide. Carlos, want to pick it up with how you can interact with the chain in different ways?
Okay. So yeah, so as Izan explained, like a little bit the basics of a smart contract. And other than the smart contract, the other missing piece that we need to build our decentralized application is like some web interface or some like a web app to interact with the contracts. So how do we connect these two pieces? So in Terra, we have different infrastructure elements that allows external sources to interact with the chain and also query data from it. So yeah, we have basically these options. The most basic one is the LCD. So LCD is like an endpoint that can run on any Terra node. And this offers a REST interface that any front-end, any web app can use to like submit transactions, generate transactions, and also query basic data from smart contracts, as well as execute messages on smart contracts. So yeah, it allows any REST capable source to interact with the chain. For a little bit more complex data types, we have FCD. So what it does is basically collect data from LCD periodically so that we can have things such as transaction history for any given address. Other than that, we have Mental, which is quite more advanced than FCD. The main difference being that FCD basically only collects data, basic chain data, such as account balances for Luna, USD, and transaction histories, but it cannot collect any contract specific data. And we need that to build things such as, to calculate things such as APRs, or like to build these cool graphics that you can see in a Mirror web app or Anchor.js. So yeah, the main thing that Mantle provides is a way to index custom data, such as the one in smart contracts. And yeah, so basically those are the three main things that you need to build your web app. And mostly with LCD, you have everything you need. And in case of more advanced data types, you can always contact with us or use the existing documentation to build your custom indexers on Mantle. And also the nice things about this is that you don't really need to care too much about this, because Terra.js already provides a nice way of dealing with this without too much trouble. So yeah, just using Terra.js with some nice JavaScript interfaces, you can do wallet management, sign and broadcast transactions, execute queries, and do anything related to interacting with your smart contracts. And on top of that, we also have Mirror.js and Anchor.js, which are basically message fabricators, so that you don't really need to care about the message structure that you need to interact with a specific functionality of a contract. You can just, as you see in this example, do mirror.openPosition, give a collateral and an asset, and Mirror.js will take care of the rest. So yeah, very simple tools to interact with our applications or with the chain. And yeah, this just like represents a little bit of what I explained with the LCD. Basically offers a way to interact with the chain. And yeah, I think we can go next slide. And actually, I think we can, yeah, I will do, can I share my screen? I guess, right? Okay, here we are. So even if this is not a technical presentation, I think the point of this is to show that even if, because some people are quite scared about developing smart contracts in Terra or in Rust, because it's a little bit different. It's not Solidity, which a lot more people are used to. But we want to show that you don't really need to learn Rust. You just, any programmer can learn this very quickly. So yeah, I will just show the basic structure of a contract. In here, like the example that I'm going to show, it's a basic example where a user would submit a bid and to guess a random number. And then if the user selects the right number, he would get the accumulated pot. So very simple logic, but a very fun game. So as you can see here, all the Terra smart contracts are organized. As you can see here, we have the contract code, and we have the final WASM, compiled WASM code. This is what actually goes into the chain, what you would upload to the chain. And then these two folders are to store the message structure in JSON format, but not really important. What we want to see is the actual contract logic. We always have some file where we store the contract logic, then the messages, the message structure that the contract will use, as well as some file where we define how to read and write from the state. So we can quickly see what the contract functionality is just by looking at the messages. So Izan explained that we have three main entry points, which are initialize, handle or execute, and then query. So here you can see this is the message that we would use to initialize the contract right after the contract is uploaded to the chain. In this case, we just need very basic parameters such as the minimum bet amount. And then for execute, the user can do the guess number operation with the input being the number that they guess. And for query message, we have a way to query the last winner. So yeah, the main difference between handle messages and query messages are that handle message can actually modify the state, and query messages can only read. And just to see like how quickly and how simple it is to implement like such a fun little game in a Terra smart contract, I will show you the logic of this little game. So yeah, for the initialize message, which is the way to initialize the contract, we just get the parameters that we got in the message, in the init message, and input it into a config data type that we can keep in storage. This configuration we can read later or on any later user operation. And that's what we need, because we need to always know like what is the minimum bet amount. And let's go to the interesting part, which is the actual operation, the logic of the operation. So for the guess number operation, so just to remind, like we want a user to submit a bid and guess a random number. And if it's the right number, he has to get the accumulated pot. To do so, first we check how much UST the user got. We have these very nice tools to interact with contract with account balances in the chain. So it's actually very simple. And then another nice way that I wanted to show is how you can interact with other contracts in the chain. So from a contract, you can query data stored in other contract. In this case, what we will do is get some randomness from a random oracle. And you could use this kind of call for any, like to obtain data from Anchor, from Mirror, from whatever contract in Terra. And yeah, so basically we can specify the contract address. In this case is the Terra Oracle address, and the message or the query message that we want to execute to get in this case, the randomness from this random oracle that we will use to generate this winner number, which is the number that the user is trying to guess. We check if the number that the user provided is the winner number. If it's not that case, then we just return with nothing. We don't give any funds to the user. In case the user selects or like guesses the right number, and then we need to know how much we should pay to that user. So until now, the contract has been holding funds because, as you may know, contracts are basically wallets that can hold any type of asset. So to know how much funds we accumulated, we just query the balance of the contract, this contract for UST. And we can just generate the price asset and also store the last winner. And then here is maybe the most important part of the contract, which is the response that we get. When a message execute finishes, it has these two very important parameters, which are logs. Here we can put anything we want, like the outcome of the operation, and then messages. In here, we can fire up any other contract execution or any other contract call. And in this case, we are just executing sending the price that the user won in this case. And yeah, that's basically it. That's how we do this quick little game. Then we also have queries. In this case, we only have one, which is query the last winner, returning the address and the pot amount of the winner. So yeah, that's basically all. Like I think it's a little bit a quick introduction, but the purpose of this is just to share how simple and like how not scary it should be to build contracts on Rust. And yeah, I hope you give it a shot. And as Ethan said, like and for me it was the same. Like I started writing contracts like a very short time ago, like from 2 or 3 months ago, and it's a very easy and not very painful experience. So I encourage all of you to do the same. So
Yeah, and now Carlos even wrote almost all of Mir V2's contracts, so he's kind of a beast at this point.
right.
And
So that just shows like how easy it is to get into it, I guess. Yeah. Exactly.
Before we jump into Q&A, I just want to drive home one more point about building on Terra, which is that most applications on Terra and a lot of what we're focused on is bringing DeFi to normies, or the masses, as we say. And we say this often because in Ethereum, a lot of the developers there, or the protocols being built, are focused on like very technical people who are already really involved in DeFi. And at Terra, we really want to focus on growing the entire pie. And that means bringing a lot of new users who are not already involved in DeFi into the crypto space via very easy to use applications. And that's why we built the Mir mobile app, which basically abstracts everything away. And we currently have many projects who are trying to build into Anchor to create like a very simple phone app that you can just deposit your regular USD by connecting your bank account. And all the blockchain stuff is basically abstracted away.
Yeah,
So
even
yeah,
like
we're really focused on
the
that.
Anchor Earn SDK, like with a very simple one, like 4 lines of code, you can have the whole Anchor Earn functionality, like which you can integrate on any application in a very, very, very easy way. So yeah, that's what we're trying to build, and yeah, hopefully more users will join the Terra ecosystem, we hope.
Yeah.
Thanks for that, guys. Do you guys want to just chat questions maybe in the sidebar for a little bit so we don't all talk over each other? Okay, we got one.
Oh, I see that. Do we have any local net where we can run Terra blockchain and deploy the smart contracts? Yes, we do. We have, actually, you can maybe Google it or see it in GitHub, in our GitHub organization. It's called Local Terra. It's basically a Docker compose that will initialize everything you need to run a local blockchain on your machine. And yeah, basically it's the most simple way to just deploy your contracts and do as much testing as you want. And you also have the testnet, Tequila network currently, and Bombay for Columbus 5, like where you can also test your smart contracts and do any testing.
I sent a link in the chat, by the way,
Oh, yeah.
docs.terra.money/contracts, which is a great entry point for anyone looking to build, which will bring you through how to install everything with Docker, how to write a very simple first smart contract, and how to set up your testing environment for your local net. So Connor is asking, can you explain some of the new projects being built on Terra, perhaps as examples brainstorming for future builds? Will, as the ecosystem manager, do you want to talk about some of the cool projects being built?
Yeah, sure. So let me actually, can you guys see this again? Is this a thing?
Yes.
Yeah, we can see it.
So I'd actually like look at this slide, which we'll send out. So I think a few core points, right? Like I would say Terra is actually like a pretty opinionated layer one. So we have a lot of teams that kind of come in and are like, want to build like the next big NFT thing. I think that's interesting. Like you should definitely think DeFi first. We are kind of like the DeFi chain. And so I think as we're thinking through internal projects to build, we're always thinking like what would be like an interesting decentralized finance application. And that's when you get all like the big returns of having all of these like native building blocks. So yeah, when we talk to new projects, I think it's always, it's interesting that almost all the new projects, especially in these hackathons, are always trying to integrate like Anchor to provide some sort of yield to an existing financial solution. I think those are very easy kind of low-hanging fruit wins, right? Like you could use like an Anchor yield to power like payments to charity, like make an Anchor deposit, have a charity account on the other side, and then power payments there. I think that's super interesting. But I think we have like 4 or 5 projects doing that already. I'm sure there'll be another one here. I think like more interesting is probably, so some of these new kind of areas are specifically cited by our investors. So crypto native financial primitives. So things like bond issuances from DAO treasuries is something that is requested by a Terra investor. Things around just creating DAO structures as well. I can send a GitHub repo from the Cosmosm team that's actually thinking about like how do we make like DAOs easier to build within the Terra ecosystem. Also, kind of a cool thing, tranching, like how do we build kind of like different levels of risk for various financial products within the Terra ecosystem. So I think these are a little bit more intermediate to advanced topics. These are kind of topics that a lot of teams aren't thinking about that we'd like to see. In terms of like what teams are building, I would say it's like a lot of kind of like Anchor integration for this use case, Anchor integration for that use case, which again is really cool. So for example, I think it would be really cool to have a yield-bearing escrow where most escrow payments today, you deposit something in an escrow contract that pays out after a certain milestone is reached. Most of that is not yield-bearing. I could see you building an entire business just around having like these yield-bearing escrow contracts out there where you make a deposit and maybe the milestone is for I don't know a coding project, and that's not going to be done for 2 years. Well, that should probably be earning interest somewhere, but those products actually don't even exist in kind of traditional finance. Escrow.com kind of sucks anyway as well. But yeah, extending that stable coin adoption is something I think a lot of investors are thinking about. Like, how can we power subscription payments, escrows, payroll, kind of like these existing finance solutions by using stable coins? And I think the benefit you get there is you can actually access new markets, like maybe different geographies or different populaces that don't have access to like a instant payroll solution or something like that. This is a request specifically from Doe for decentralized asset management. So one of the core priorities of the Mirror team is to build at least 10 new Mirror front ends by the end of the year. And the request being, you should build new functionality into that Mirror front end. So for example, the ability to, I don't know, request to mint a new asset and post something as a governance proposal, things like that. Doe has a post on the Mirror forum about that. You guys should all read it. I think if you have a good proposal, we've already said we'd fund it with something from the community pool. And then this last bucket is actually one of the only things I think investors are interested in that isn't in the typical kind of like DeFi space, which is picks and shovels for other developers. So things like block explorers, indexers, dev tooling, and frameworks, I think could be really useful to everyone. And in my opinion, it's probably one of the highest leverage things you can work on, but probably requires a lot more kind of development skill. So I think if you're interested in any of these things or anything else, feel free to reach out and we can chat about it. But yeah.
I think Arush Mishra has a question too. So the question is basically about contract migration. So how to change a smart contract that is already on the chain. So CosmoWasm smart contracts, they have the migration feature. So after you have deployed your smart contract, and you want to change the code logic of that contract, you can, instead of deploying a new one, you can execute a contract migration, which is a specific kind of message that we didn't show in this example, but there is like a lot of documentation about it. So yeah, in this message, what you specify is basically you call the current contract and then you tell him, okay, so now the code for this contract will be in a different one. And then, so yeah, you keep the same address and the same state, but only changing the contract logic. And additionally, if you also have to change some of the state of the contract, you can add some state migration logic to the migration entry point. This is something that, yeah, sometimes it can sound a little bit complicated, but it's quite simple. And I think I can share some example about it. So yeah, I will try to find it and I will post it on the chat. And yeah, the second question is about the smart contract being a wallet. So if I want to hold the money, as in example he showed, how and where exactly these deposits are holded. So you basically have to imagine a smart contract as a like a smart wallet. Like it's like not you can define the logic of how to deal with those funds. But I don't know exactly what you mean by your question, but yeah. So if you can elaborate a little bit more on that, maybe I can reply better.
Also, if you have less technical questions or ideas that you want to talk about or discuss, feel free to ask about those as well. I'm sure we can help discuss that. Will, do you want to take this question?
I actually feel like Carlos should probably take this one. I feel like he has a way better answer than I do. But I would say, like, you know, MasterCard
the scalability.
Yeah, I feel like you'll have a better answer.
Okay.
I would say 1,200 transactions per second is scalable, like enough for kind of the usage we're seeing. But in terms of like future, what do you think?
So the feature, like actually one of the best features about CosmoWasm is the IBC feature, like how we can interconnect all these Cosmos based blockchains. So, and I think like Dokon talked about this before, but so the idea is that in the future, like we would have different blockchains, each of them like a branded differently. Like for example, we would still have the Terra blockchain offering all of its stable coins, and then we would have another blockchain for Mars protocol, for example, maybe another one for Mirror, and they would all feed from each other, interact with each other through this IBC protocol. So yeah, the way we scale in, or the way we plan to scale in Terra is basically horizontally by having a lot of different blockchains, each of them like with specific features, and all of them interconnected and feeding each other. So that's the way we can scale in the future. Yeah. Or even
Does that
even now
answer your
the way we
question?
have like a now you know, Chai running in Terra blockchain, if there is I don't know, a new payment system for another country, that could be segregated in a different blockchain too. So this way we can scale horizontally pretty well. I see another question. Does the doc contain how to deploy the WASM in either local Terra or testnet? I'm not sure, but
It does, yeah, it does.
does?
And it walks you through deploying it onto the testnet and then interacting with it.
Oh,
Yeah.
cool.
There's also some really good example smart contracts by CosmWasm. If you go to the CosmWasm documentation, you can find examples on like escrow accounts or something like staking, or a few different use cases, which can be pretty helpful.
Okay. If the smart contract is the wallet, are the transaction funds being stored in the contract? Oh, no, it's like the smart contract has like he has the authorization to spend the funds that are assigned to that address, because as you know, like all contracts like has an address, same as any user address. So yeah, it's not that the funds are stored in the contract or in the contract state. It's just that the actual contract is a wallet. Yeah.
So Arush, you don't need to do anything on your end. It's as if the tokens are held within the blockchain and assigned to the contract's address. So you don't need to do anything. It's just stored there for you basically. And you can enable it to send out funds as needed.
Yeah, I'll quickly answer Amir's question. So Amir, Amir's question being, when are we going to have USD just directly deposited into Anchor? Like, when can I get a direct deposit of my salary, get it into Anchor? I think that's like the core issue that we're kind of seeing is this on and off ramp issue. I think Anchor becoming its own like business with Matt, the GM running it, very experienced kind of like executive running that team. He's solving a lot of these on-off ramp issues, which are really not only technical issues, but they're regulatory issues and kind of user experience issues. But the Anchor SDK, it's interesting because like the world hasn't seen like proof of stake based like returns like this, and they haven't seen like decentralized cryptocurrency. So I think like when do we get a neobank to adopt this? I think it's just a kind of a process of education, maybe over the next hopefully year or so, when that on-off ramp becomes very easy to do. Yeah, this is a good question. What is the exact difference between WASM and CosmWASM? Is it Cosmos-based WASM smart contract from Shankar?
So basically, like a Cosmo WASM is integrating the WASM VM into the Cosmos SDK. And so Cosmo WASM provides additional libraries and tools on top of WASM to interact with the underlying chain. So that's the main difference.
I feel like we've got time for maybe like one last question and then maybe hand it back off to the Ben team.
Amir, by the way, there's a link I sent above from Terrians, and they include a nice overview of a bunch of protocols building on Terra. If you look up some of those protocols inside the financial section, you'll be able to look at the Twitters of a bunch of groups that are making Anchor integrations like Kado and Cash and Tick and a few others, so you can see how they're integrating.
And I just copied to the chat an example of contract migration for the user that was asking about it.
Any final questions before we wrap this up?
All right, that looks like it's it. So thank you guys so much for taking the time today to give this this really awesome talk, and also some really great answers to the questions dropped in the chat there. So, oh, Carlos, if you could show that example, please. We've got one last one.
Sure. So let me just go over it quickly. So remember that we said that we had these three main entry points, which are initialization, handle, and query. So we actually have a fourth one, which is migrate. And so we can add this to your contract if you want to be able to change the contract code. So how this works is actually, maybe it's a little bit weird to show this because this is the actual migration for Mirror. So it's a little bit bigger than a normal contract. But so basically, you would execute a migrate message specifying a new code ID, so a new stored contract with different code. And then you would come here and you can execute different migration logics, for example, to change the structure of your configuration or to change any other data that you want to change from previous state to migrate to the new one. That logic you can specify it here, and after this message is executed, now the state of the old because actually a contract is basically a state, and then the code, the smart contract, which has the logic, right? So basically the state will be the same with the migration logic that we apply here, and then the code, so the logic will be the new one that you uploaded it. And yeah, so basically it's the same as doing an instantiate message, but the difference is that instantiate message, you do it from zero, like from nothing, and migrate message, you do it like from a previous contract that already exists. And yeah, and you keep the same address and everything. And it's important to mention that only the contract administrator can execute this migration. And the contract administrator is the address that first initialized that contract. So yeah, that's an important detail to keep in mind. And that contract administrator cannot be changed. So you should keep those keys very safe. So yeah, I hope that answered your question. If you have any other inquiries about contract migration, you can text me directly and we can and I can try to help you.
Sweet.
Awesome. Yeah, maybe just drop in the chat how to reach you guys. You know, if students have more questions, if they want to learn more, maybe the best way to stay connected to one, the Terra community, and also you guys, if you have any socials that you'd like to drop.
Connor, are you like actively using Discord for the hackathon?
Yes.
Yeah, I think,
yes.
okay, there you go.
Cool.
Yeah,
Yeah. Maybe we can just use Discord, but if you guys want to reach out personally, I think we all have Telegram or whatnot.
Yeah, we're all on the hackathon's Discord. You can go to the hashtag Terra chat on the Discord and ask any questions there, and we'll be happy to help. Yeah, TerraSwap is a smart contract, or a bunch of different smart contracts deployed on the blockchain. All right, thanks everyone.
Cool.
Have a good evening.
Thanks,
Thank you
guys.
so much, guys.
See you.